The mysterious Sigma male is often labeled as antisocial, a loner, and a rebel without a cause. But in reality, he is just someone who prefers his own company and needs alone time in order to recharge and gain clarity. Although they may be more reserved than the average person, they still have their own set of boundaries that should be respected. Here are 11 things you should never say to a Sigma male. Number 1. You're too shy and quiet. Sigma males have spent their entire lives being told they are shy or quiet. While many people use the word shy to describe someone who is reserved, they are not the same thing. Contrary to popular belief, Sigma males aren't necessarily shy. They simply prefer to listen and absorb information from others and don't like talking too much if it isn't necessary. They prefer to observe before jumping into conversations. Sigma men can actually be quite sociable if under the right circumstances, so don't make assumptions about them based on their apparent lack of vocal presence. People may misunderstand Sigma's quietness as arrogance or disinterest, but that's far from the truth. He isn't very talkative, so never assume he's not interested in a conversation. However, he could talk for hours about a subject he is passionate about if he forms a strong bond with someone. Sigma males usually prefer to stay under the radar and don't like to draw attention to themselves. They avoid being too loud and don't seek to be the center of attention. This doesn't mean that they are not confident in their own abilities. They just don't need to be validated by other people. Number 2. Stop daydreaming. Sigma men often seem lost in thought because they think deeply and ponder different ideas. While many people misunderstand this as daydreaming, it's actually a great source of inspiration for Sigmas. Daydreaming is when your mind wanders off without control, while deep thinking is a conscious and organized exploration of ideas. It's a way for Sigma males to express their creativity and make sense of the world around them. Deep thinking allows them to explore their imagination and come up with new ideas. It is a way for them to take a break from reality and engage in some much-needed alone time. They are often accused of being lazy or unproductive when they spend too much time thinking, but this couldn't be further from the truth. While the average person will stick to a routine and go with the flow, Sigma thrives when they can think outside the box. Asking them to stop daydreaming not only restricts their creativity, but it's like telling them to stop being themselves. They need the freedom to be able to explore their thoughts without interruption. So instead of questioning their thinking process, try to understand how some people benefit from using their imagination. Sigma men don't like to be told what to do, especially when it comes to their thinking habits. They are often misunderstood and labeled because of their unique way of thinking. Number 3. This is beyond you. Sigma men are highly competent and can often take on tasks that others find too difficult. Telling them something is beyond them, even if it may seem like an impossible task, is not only condescending but also underestimating. Sigma men often relish the challenge and take on tasks others may find intimidating. They are full of potential and have a knack for complex problems, so it's important not to limit them with statements like this. It can make them feel disrespected and unsupported, taking the task anyway. If you say this to a Sigma, you'll end up out of their friends list, as they don't need people who drag them down or underestimate their capabilities. They surround themselves with ambitious and supportive people who shoot for the moon. Limiting their potential makes you look like a bad influence and someone who doesn't believe in them. And to be honest, no one wants that. Number 4. You're antisocial. This statement is usually said with a negative undertone and implies that someone is to be blamed for their social behavior. Sigma males often appear antisocial because they don't like to engage in small talk or meaningless conversations. They prefer meaningful interactions and deep conversations over surface-level topics. This doesn't mean they can't be social when they want to. It just means that their default setting is to avoid the spotlight. Sigma males don't mind spending time alone. In fact, many of them value it. They use this time to reflect on their thoughts and recharge their batteries. They don't need to constantly be around people and can find comfort in their own company. Everyone expresses their social behavior differently, which is why it's best to avoid making assumptions about someone's character. Some people may prefer small talk, while others may prefer deep conversations. As long as someone isn't hurting themselves or others, then it's not our place to judge. Number 5. You don't express yourself enough. Sigma men are very emotionally intelligent and often hide their true feelings behind a mask of stoicism. People may be tempted to tell them that they're not expressing themselves enough, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Sigma men often prefer to keep their emotions to themselves as they find it easier to process their feelings internally. They don't need to express their emotions to have meaningful connections with people. They can still form strong relationships without needing to constantly talk about their feelings. They may not be vocalizing their thoughts and feelings, but that doesn't mean they're not aware of them. Sigma men prefer to take the time they need to go through their emotions and process them in their own way, without feeling pressure from other people. While it may seem like they're not expressing themselves enough, everyone processes things differently. Number 6. What's wrong with you? This type of question is usually asked with a hint of judgment or criticism, which is why it's best to avoid saying it to Sigma. Questions like this can be interpreted as an attempt to exploit someone's feelings, which could make them feel uncomfortable. Sigma males have spent their entire lives being misunderstood and labeled, which is why they tend to be more guarded and less likely to share their thoughts and emotions. Most people can't understand their way of thinking, so they won't bother trying to explain it. Their mind is constantly working and analyzing, so they are often perceived as distant or unapproachable. Asking a Sigma what's wrong with him could make you come off as an average-minded individual who doesn't understand the complexity of one's thought process. Number 7. Don't give unsolicited advice. These guys can come off as intimidating and unapproachable, which is why many people assume they don't need help. This isn't true. Sigma men may be independent thinkers, but they still value advice from others who have gone through similar experiences. However, they don't appreciate unsolicited advice because it can feel intrusive and like someone is trying to impose their opinions on them. Sigmas prefer to solve their problems independently, so they don't need someone else telling them what to do. Unless they specifically ask for advice, it's best to let them figure things out on their own. They tend to be quite resourceful and have a knack for solving complex issues. They are independent thinkers who don't need to rely on others for validation. They don't want someone constantly telling them what to do or how to think. If they need advice, they will ask for it. Otherwise, it's best not to offer any unsolicited advice, as it can come off as patronizing or condescending. They need the freedom to think for themselves and make their own decisions without being interrupted. Number 8. Why are you so arrogant? Sigmas can often come across as arrogant to people who don't understand the inner workings of their personality. While it is true that they have very strong opinions and are not afraid to express them, this doesn't mean they are arrogant or superior in any way. They don't think they are better than anyone else, but instead prefer to stand up for their own beliefs and views. Many people mistake their self-confidence for arrogance, but this is far from the truth. They are unapologetically themselves and can be quite passionate about their beliefs, but this doesn't mean they are arrogant. Sigma men strive for authenticity, which is reflected in how they live their lives. They don't bother explaining themselves to those who don't understand them, so you may be left with more questions than answers if you ask this question. Number 9. That's not how it works. Sigma males are unique and often approach life from a different perspective. They don't necessarily follow the same rules as everyone else and like to think outside the box regarding how they do things. Telling a Sigma male their idea won't work is not only useless, but it's also naive as you don't know the full extent of their capabilities. Sigma men are often underestimated, but many times their idea can work, and everyone gets surprised. We are blinded by our own preconceived ideas and expectations, so it's important to keep an open mind when it comes to others' ideas. This is how the Sigma mindset works. They don't like to be tied down by rules and expectations. They want the freedom to explore, experiment, and think for themselves without being boxed in by what's seen as the normal way of doing things. Sigma men value their independence and will always ensure it is respected. Number 10. You need to change. Sigma males have a strong sense of identity and values that they follow closely. Asking them to change who they are or how they think disrespects not only them, but also their values. Sigma men are not the type of people to conform or be swayed easily, as they value independence and freedom. Telling a Sigma man that they need to change can make it seem like you don't accept them for who they are, which is something no one wants. Of course, they can always work on themselves and improve, but it should come from a place of growth and not out of pressure or coercion. Sigma men embrace their unique qualities and appreciate when others do the same. So showing them respect and acceptance is key, as well as trying to understand their perspective rather than telling them what to do. While it may seem like a small thing, it can have a big impact on how Sigma views you and your relationship. Number 11. You should try to fit in. They value independence and freedom, so asking them to fit in or conform goes against everything they stand for. They live life on their own terms, even when it's not always easy, and they will never compromise their values to accommodate other people. They don't care about impressing others or trying to fit a certain mold, nor do they expect to be accepted by everyone. Asking a Sigma to fit in can make them feel like they have to sacrifice their identity, which is something they are unwilling to do. While they may understand the importance of being part of a community and are not completely against it, they hate the idea of having to change themselves in order to fit in. Sigma men always prefer authenticity over conformity and will never compromise their principles just to make someone else happy.